Welcome, everybody, and good afternoon to Animal Protection New Mexico and Animal Protection Voters 2025 Annual Review Meeting. I'm Dorothy Hutchinson. You probably know I'm the Chief Development Officer for the organization, and I wanted to thank you all for being here with us this afternoon, and of course for your support of the animals in New Mexico. Because without you, our continued fight to make humane the new normal in our state would not be possible. The focus for 2025 was and continues to be on developing and strengthening strategic state infrastructure for the protection of animals in New Mexico. And today we are excited to share with you a year's worth of accomplishments and monumental impact for animals and their people all across our beautiful state, and provide you with a preview of what's in store for this year and even beyond. Our Executive Director, Elizabeth Jennings, is along with other staff here, and they will all talk about APNM's and APV's impact, and this will be followed by a question and answer session after the presentation concludes. We will be monitoring the chat in case somebody needs help or wants to just talk to us. And as a reminder, if you have questions, please type them in the Q&A section, otherwise they're likely to get lost. We will answer them at the end of the meeting. And for now, I'm just super excited to get us all started, and we'll turn it over to our Executive Director, Lisa Jennings.
Thank you, Dorte, and welcome everyone. It's so great to see everyone. We have a few dozen people joining us today to hear about all of our monumental achievements from 2025. Thanks to your support, thanks to your very active engagement and activism. It all matters, it all adds up, and we so appreciate you. So there's a couple introductory slides that I always like to share just to get us grounded and help us remember where we're all headed with Animal Protection New Mexico and Animal Protection Voters, helping animals matter in New Mexico. The first slide really is just to remind us all what our vision is, and our vision is to make humane the new normal in New Mexico. Our mission statement really is boiled down, as Dorte mentioned, into the essence of making systemic change for animals. So improving the systems that we operate by in this state that lead to the humane treatment of animals. And then lastly, the operational focus for us is twofold. It's to have an impact right now and to sustain that impact and to be able to make sure that we can keep making a difference year after year. Next slide, please. As you probably all know, we are APNM and APV, and those two organizations are key working together. There's a very synergistic relationship between the two, where Animal Protection Voters, as you know, works very hard to pass laws with your help. Up in Santa Fe, these are state laws or local laws. And then Animal Protection New Mexico makes sure that those laws are fully implemented and come to fruition, that the animals and people in the community that they matter to benefit from those new policies and practices, and actually even making sure that funding gets distributed. And we'll talk a lot about that today and the big impact that that work has had on our New Mexico communities. And then again, as we get laws passed, as we get them implemented, we always honor the policymakers who help us get these things done because it doesn't happen without the humane lawmakers. And then those lawmakers hopefully come back to us and want to do more to make a bigger difference for the state. So this is what we call our full circle advocacy. Next slide, please. Okay, now on to the exciting news. I won't go into a lot of detail, but I'm just here to give a very general overview of the exciting summaries that you're going to hear from our program staff today. This first slide is really just the big impact. When I talked about impact and sustainability, I have a slide for each of those, one for impact, one for sustainability. So the impact that we made, and I'm going to start with our 2025 legislative and election successes. So we have to kind of move our brain backwards a little bit because most of you who are familiar with our work know that we just finished the 2026 legislative session. But today we're going to talk about the 2026 successes at the end of this presentation. This is all about last fiscal calendar year and what we achieved. So you'll have to bear with us to wait to hear about what we just did in the recent session, legislative session. But in 2025, just to help you remember some of the really amazing work that our team did, it was truly a consequential year. We helped establish the first ever animal welfare program fund with a huge $5 million in state funding. So you'll hear all about what that's doing to help our shelters. We also worked with a giant coalition of other advocates to pass true reform for all of the Game Commission and Department of Game and Fish laws and how that whole department and agency is run. You'll hear all about that from Nina. We helped get dogfighting and cockfighting added to the state's racketeering law to really up the ante for the consequences of being involved in dogfighting and cockfighting. Our team did some amazing local election work and helped get some really great champions for animals elected at the local level. So I'm talking about city council and at the mayor level. And then also we worked very hard when we're working on candidate screening for animal protection voters. We want to make sure that the goals of our organization are integrated into what these candidates understand and want to help us move forward with in their work once they get elected. So we worked hard to integrate our really big goal of creating a state department of animal protection, that vision for doing that. We integrated that into screening which candidates we wanted to support. So that was all under the legislative and elections successes. When we move to the next column, when we talk about our program development and planning and growth, huge news last year that every surviving Alamogordo chimp that has been languishing down in Alamogordo at the primate facility down there, finally, after 30 years, arrived at Chimp Haven, and we had a really nice chimp celebration with some really consequential people like former Senator and former Ambassador Udall. There were some comments from the late Jane Goodall and just all kinds of other exciting things that you'll hear about. We also continued our very powerful domestic violence co-sheltering work, and you'll hear some details from Judy later, but we have the highest percentage of domestic violence shelters in the nation that offer co-sheltering for survivors' animals. It doesn't happen by accident, so you'll hear all about the great work there. We published a report on the costs, and the costs are varied. It's not just dollars, but the cost to our health, to the environment, of the dairy industry in New Mexico, and also you'll hear about how we want to tie that to a policy that we're pushing for in schools to make it easier for school children to get alternatives to dairy milk. You'll hear about 2 different distributions of really important money, spay-neuter distribution of $1 million last year of state dollars into deserving state spay-neuter providers, and a whopping $3 million for our shelters. And then also we were managed to work with the Children, Youth, and Families for getting our domestic violence services, the CARE program services, more sustainable. We also are working with the help of some state funding on a very comprehensive animal services assessment for a whole region of the state that we hope will inform many more policies and many more kinds of infrastructure and services that are going to be needed kind of across the board, all over across the state. And then we also gathered some new animal shelter data to help us make the case for the needs out there. And then moving over to the next column for outreach, we are very lucky to have a tribal affairs manager on our staff, a tribal member who has helped us tremendously with engaging with and partnering and learning how to respectfully partner with tribal nations in New Mexico. And it has resulted in some really important partnerships and real successes for animals in those communities. And so you'll hear more about that. And then finally, it's last but it's not least, is that while we're doing all this new work that you just heard about, we're busy also keeping going with the kinds of services that are really helping in dire need, helping to address dire needs in the community with equine services, both domestic and free roaming, with our domestic violence helpline, our cruelty helpline, many community partnerships that we have that help with spay-neuter and getting animals transported to other states for hopefully better chances at adoption, our plant-based meal support in the community, animal control officer support and training, and disaster response support. So there is so much that we have our hands in, and we're able to do this because of your support, your dedication, and this work takes time. Many of you have been with us for years and continue to support us. That's very important because these things don't change overnight, as you well know. Next slide, please. I wanted to share this lovely testimonial from two of our donors, Julie Roshman and Sandra Palmer. She said, and we are impressed with what you manage to get done each year. Thank you again for all that you do for New Mexico's animals. And I love the fact that they said what you manage to get done, because it really recognizes that this work can be incredibly hard to do. And it's because of your support, our staff is able to bring the knowledge and expertise and skills to these efforts to really move the needle and change things for animals on the ground. Next slide, please. All right, I promised you this other slide on what we've been able to achieve with sustainability. So again, it's important that we can do this work, but we need to be able to keep doing it because there's so much more that needs to be fixed and helped in this state. So the first thing I want to mention is that we've been able to really focus on establishing and funding state infrastructure for animals, as Dorte mentioned that in the introduction. This is so key, and when we talk about infrastructure, and you'll hear me talk more about this in detail later, really infrastructure is not just bricks and mortar. It's not just shelter buildings or equipment for animal control officers. It includes better policies or laws. It includes services. It includes funding. It includes systems or processes that work better for people and animals. So it's all of the above. So when you hear us talking about infrastructure, remember to think about it as hard infrastructure and soft infrastructure is the way we refer to it. We're really proud that we have a really high donor satisfaction, and our major donor retention rate is really way above the industry average. And you all make it easy to stay in touch with you. You're engaged. We want to be able to keep you informed, and you in return support and continue to support the work that we do. So thank you for doing that support year after year, for being engaged. We also always want to work on improving the diversity of sources that support us financially, and so we've improved that where we don't necessarily just rely on a handful of people, but we get our income and our support from a variety of sources. So we're always trying to broaden that. So we're not vulnerable if one of those sources goes away. And that's what you deserve. As a supporter, you need to know that we're doing everything we can to stick around and keep doing this work. We're very proud that we have an unmodified audit of Animal Protection New Mexico and our supporting organization called Animal Protection New Mexico Foundation. And I believe it's the 11th year that we've been able to say that. So we're very proud of that. That means that what we report on our financial statements can be backed up and is vetted by an auditor. We're also committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging, and we are finding, of course, no surprise that the more people feel like they belong and are included in this work, the more our work thrives and grows, and that's what we're seeing, and that the more the animals are helped out in every kind of community across the state. We want you to know we have a commitment to our staff's training so that they stay up to date and have all the tools that they can get, that we can afford to get, to do this work as best as we can. And then lastly, we have been rated the highest rating by what's called Candid. It's a platinum seal. Again, that's a charity rating service. And then also Charity Navigator, we have a very high 4-star rating. So yeah, that's the introduction, and now you're going to be hearing next from Stacy Sutton Kirby, who's our Chief Government Affairs Officer, and she's going to tell you all about the 2025 legislative and election successes. So sit back and enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa, and welcome everyone, and excited to be here for the 2025 annual review, and super excited to be giving you a summary of the legislative wins in 2025. And then, as Lisa said, we'll talk more about the 2026 wins at closer to the end of the presentation. So for those of you who were with us last session, you most likely remember House Bill 113, which established the Animal Welfare Program Fund, is, as Lisa said, this is an historic amount of funding dedicated to animal shelters, animal control and care services, and to training animal control officers and allowing them to be able to enforce animal welfare ordinances and as needed, be able to have the resources and the training that they would need to do animal cruelty investigations. So this $5 million appropriation that made it into this fund, the Animal Welfare Program Fund, we anticipate that could be spent down within 2.5 to 3 years, I believe. My coworker can tell you more about the projections on that. And so this existing, what we call expendable fund, will be going back to find additional appropriations for that. But what an injection of funding for our shelters that needed basic things when they responded to a survey asking, what is it that you need to be able to do your job sheltering animals there in your community? And they were asking for things like fixing leaky roofs and being able to buy an HVAC system and being able to just make basic infrastructure repairs, as well as being able to have equipment and supplies to be able to do the kind of sheltering that could keep the animals safe and healthy in their care. So we are very excited about having gotten that launched. It will, as I say, it will be available for continual appropriations, legislative appropriations to go into the fund. And we are excited to see the results already being reported back to us for the communities that were able to receive distributions out of the fund last year. House Bill 113, creating the Animal Welfare Program Fund. It represents the most significant investment in animal sheltering in New Mexico that we've ever seen. So we're extremely grateful and proud of the work that our team did to get that over the finish line. Next slide, please. Additionally, in the 2025 legislative session, work that had been going on for nearly a decade culminated in the filing and passage of Senate Bill 5 to reform the Game Commission and the Department of Game and Fish. The Game Commission, now called the Wildlife Commission, oversees what the Department of Game and Fish, which is now called the Wildlife Department, the commission oversees the department and really helps to set policy as to what the department can focus on, the scope of their authority. And for many years, what we call non-consumptive users, folks who enjoy taking photographs of wildlife, folks who want to observe wildlife in our, beautiful ecosystems and habitats, but don't want to hunt or fish those animals. They were not necessarily considered a priority in terms of what the wildlife department was looking at in terms of setting policy. And in large part, that was driven by the fact that the Wildlife Commission was comprised of many folks who were in the pro hunting, pro angler, pro fishing column, and not necessarily someone from a wildlife conservation or an animal protection background. The passage of SB 5 requires that the commission is now made up of a diverse set of commissioners who have specific skills and backgrounds with regard to wildlife conservation and understanding biology and ecosystems. And there's also a spot that is laid out for someone with an animal coming from an animal protection, animal welfare background. And so this just represented a huge change. Setting policy comes from the top. It represented a huge change in how the the commission can go forward in setting the tone for the department and what the department can focus on. Getting down to the department level, there was a huge injection of funds, $10.5 million, that will enable the department to modernize, and this is really significant, enable the department to work on projects that will conserve species in greatest need of conservation. So instead of being focused on just the species that people want to hunt or to fish, they can really turn their eye to and work on projects that will help to save species that are in the greatest need of support so that they don't become endangered, and so that we can do what we can to preserve our native wildlife in New Mexico, which is something that our wildlife department should have been focusing on long ago. So finally, SB 5 was signed into law. It represents a paradigm shift in managing and conserving New Mexico's wildlife and really makes space for folks who are observing and enjoying New Mexico's wildlife without consuming those animals. I will tell you more about the end cap that happened to SB 5 in the 2026 session. A final puzzle piece was put in place. We'll get there later in the presentation. I'm also happy to share with you Senate Bill 70 passed in the 2025 legislative session. Senate Bill 70 added dogfighting and cockfighting to our state's racketeering law, often referred to as our RICO statute. Under a RICO statute, if you are engaged in organized crime, you're not only going to be charged with the crime that you committed, dogfighting or cockfighting or money laundering, but additionally, assets from the organized crime syndicate can be taken from that dogfighting that dogfighting ring, that cockfighting ring, and the authorities have the ability to go after other people in the organization apart from the person who may have been doing the actual dogfighting or put that particular dog, owned that dog, and put them into the fight. So adding organized animal fighting to our RICO statute really gives law enforcement and prosecutors better tools for disrupting organized crime syndicates and really it empowers our law enforcement agencies to disrupt animal fighting. You'll also see a little picture there on the right of the crowd that gathered, part of the crowd that gathered in 2025 at the Capitol to join us for uh, Animal Protection Lobby Day. And I'll be joined by Grace Montano Irwin, our logistics associate, to tell you more about that. So, next slide, please. And here she is. I'd like to introduce Grace Montano Irwin, Animal Protection Voters Logistics Associate. Take the stage, Grace.
Hello, everybody. As Stacy said, my name is Grace. I work primarily with animal protection voters. One of the big things I had the pleasure and joy of working on last year during the legislative session was our Animal Protection Lobby Day. For those of you who might not know about this event, this is our annual event that we host at the Roundhouse, and it's a day where people from across the state of New Mexico can come join us, learn more about our priority bills for the session. We walk together as a group to the Capitol, have a press conference, and then people can go to their legislators' offices and deliver handwritten letters. Last year in 2025, we had over 50 advocates join us in Santa Fe. We had 9 individuals who walked into our office the day of the event to register on the spot, which was really exciting to see. Of the group of the 50 plus people who came with us, we had 20 House districts and 17 Senate districts that were represented. Our legislative body is made up of 112 districts. That is 70 House districts and 32 Senate districts. So we had 37 of those 112 districts represented during Lobby Day. This is an in-person event, so some people can be limited with travel from depending on where they live in New Mexico. It might be difficult to get to Santa Fe to attend this event in person. So one of the things that we offer our supporters is if you can't make the trip to Santa Fe for Lobby Day, you can email us your letter to your representative or your senator, either urging them to vote in favor of a bill if they haven't had the opportunity to do so yet, or thank them for their yes vote in committee or on the floor. So of the 50 plus people that we had 118 personalized letters. We had a good chunk of people who weren't able to join us, email us letters that we hand delivered on their behalf. And we also had 5 handwritten thank you cards expressing heartfelt thanks from constituents on House Bill 113. During the day of, we have a table in the Roundhouse where people who are visiting the Capitol can learn more about what we're doing. So these are people who aren't necessarily in the 50 plus people who joined us for the event. They're people who might not know anything about animal protection voters. So I just want to extend my deepest gratitude to Humane Communities. They were the team who primarily manned that table along with some of the supporters that we had. From their table manning, we had 32 new email signups. So that's 32 new advocates who joined our team. And just to briefly go over the pictures, you can see in the upper right-hand corner our wonderful photographer, Heidi Baxter, taking a picture of Representative Matthew McQueen as he was presenting in our Lobby Day press conference on a couple of the bills that he sponsored, including Senate Bill 5, as Stacy was discussing. Down at the bottom, from left to right, we have some of our board members and advocates who helped me stuff individual packets for all of our attendees. We have the big group photo of everybody in front of the Roundhouse. And then the last picture on the right is a group that was photographed during the press conference, including one of our special guest speakers, Ally McGraw, and former Santa Fe City Councilwoman Sig Lindell.
Thank you, Grace. Next, we'll talk about our animal cruelty helpline. As many of you on the call know, Animal Protection New Mexico has offered the animal cruelty helpline for folks to call in if they suspect animal cruelty, animal abuse, neglect, or other harmful behavior. The helpline is open 5 days a week and is staffed by Alan Edmonds, as well as Ruben Lucero, and they take numerous calls every week, and every call that they take creates the opportunity for a case to be open. Not only do they answer those calls, but then once they open a case, they follow up with local authorities. The lines that you're seeing here, the graphs that you're seeing here on the slide, I'll take a minute to explain. We track every single case, all the numbers for how many calls we get, and then our staff that I just mentioned, Alan and Ruben, they really close the loop on those cases, find out what the disposition is. If a caller calls in and they need guidance or help on how to connect with authorities on a suspected animal abuse case, they give them that guidance, and then they follow up. They follow up with authorities, they follow up with callers, so that we really can get a look at what are the most frequent types of instances of animal abuse being reported. And largely just because folks don't necessarily know what does their local ordinance cover. Activity that they suspect is violating the state's animal cruelty law or a local ordinance, they call in and talk to our staff to find out if that's true. And then, as I said, our staff opens the cases and then tracks them and finds out the disposition of those cases. I think you'll see this, it looks like the trend line kind of going down there. I know this is kind of small font, a little hard to read, but I'll just give you the overview. What you're looking at here goes all the way back to 2020 through the end of 2025. So generally what we see is the trend going down. There was a spike in cases being reported during COVID-19, and our understanding is that folks may have had more opportunity to observe what was going on around them in terms of suspected animal abuse or animal neglect. For example, if they saw a dog in their neighborhood that was continually tied out and didn't seem to have access to shade or to water or shelter, the number of calls have been drifting down over time to where we're now getting back to what looks like pre-COVID, which is roughly 150 calls a year that come into the animal cruelty helpline. But behind all these numbers, something that I really want to underscore for folks listening in on this call, all of these dots, all of these statistics on the slide here, they represent an animal that someone thought was in need, an animal that was possibly being subjected to cruelty, to neglect, or some other type of harmful activity. And every one of the calls, every one of the cases that come in, our staff is so professional and take those cases so very seriously. They have the expertise that is, I think, just incomparable across the state. And while it's hard to sort of convey that in a graph that shows you a line of how many cases they took calls on over the years, what I really just want to put out there to you is that each of these conversations helps somebody who called in who was concerned that an animal was being hurt or that an animal had been hurt or wanted to prevent animal cruelty. And it's a really tough job. It's emotionally taxing, and our guys do a fantastic job. And they know it's tough, but they just keep their shoulder to the wheel and just really keep on top of their cases. I'm extremely proud of the service that they offer our state by allowing people to access information when they call into the helpline and get advice. Next slide, please. A little bit more about our animal control and law enforcement outreach and engagement. I did mention that Alan Edmonds on our team oversees, and he's the director that oversees the animal cruelty helpline. But in addition to that, he does outreach to various animal control departments and law enforcement agencies and connects them with animal control officer training scholarships. He also makes it a real point to go and visit and interface with law enforcement and animal control officers when appropriate, if, for example, if it's a co-training that they're sponsoring, or on Animal Control Officer Appreciation Day, Alan and Ruben make a point of buying donuts or other sweet treats and actually personally delivering messages of our gratitude and our thanks to animal control officers and the law enforcement officers that are tasked with animal control. They actually drive out there and make those personal visits. They're so respected and so connected with our law enforcement and animal control officers across the state. I'll draw your attention to the photo there at the very bottom of the slide. That happened actually early in 2026, but in recognition of work that Alan Edmonds did all throughout 2025, he received a special award from the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office for the resources and expertise and support that he, in his role here at Animal Protection New Mexico, helps to offer law enforcement officers, and animal control officers, whether it's by way of getting training or lending his expertise on animal cruelty investigations. We're extremely proud of Alan. Congratulations for having received that award from the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office. It was a really beautiful way to round out the year. In 2025, 95 scholarships to 66 officers in 23 locales were made available to officers who otherwise either wouldn't have been able to afford, their departments wouldn't have been able to afford to pay for the training, or they may have possibly had to find a way to pay out of pocket. And since 2018, APNM has been responsible for training 272 officers in 26 counties and 8 pueblos through a total of 463 scholarships. Next slide, please. Along with the work that Alan and Ruben do, operating the helpline and giving their assistance and expertise to animal control officers and law enforcement officers, Ruben has a very special role in doing tribal outreach to pueblos and to tribal leadership. I won't read every single bullet point here on the presentation, but I will just say that Ruben does extensive outreach and makes himself available anytime he is invited to sit on a panel or to participate in a tribal conference or meeting. He's just remarkable at figuring out a way to fulfill all his obligations that he has, answering the cruelty helpline, as well as making himself available to participate in tribal activities or in various types of meetings and tribal occasions when they've invited him to either come and give advice on animal control and animal protection, animal welfare issues there on the Pueblo, or in a larger conference, for example, at an ASPCA conference. We're really, again, proud of the work that Ruben does to establish those connections and keep those conversations going. He's really quite a gem to have on our staff, and there's so much that he's done. It would take me quite a bit of time to read through all of the outreach that he did in 2025. If we could go to the next slide, you'll see even more locations that he worked with. As you can see, Taos, Jemez Pueblo. He also is assisting on, as Lisa nodded to earlier, an animal services assessment project. This project is going to produce an amazing report that really helps people to understand what the needs are, what the current capacity is, and make recommendations for how to address the animal protection, animal welfare, animal sheltering needs in the Northwestern COG, and we'll make recommendations about how to best implement best practices going forward. Without Ruben's assistance, working with the contractor and producing this report, I think it's fair to say we wouldn't know what we know to put into the report. We wouldn't be in the conversations that we're in. But because of his particular skill set and the respect that he commands from other folks out there amongst tribal leadership and at the pueblos, we're able to learn from them what their needs are there at the pueblos and in the tribal areas. And the report that will be produced, I think, will really speak a lot to areas that oftentimes get forgotten or don't have a voice in things. So with that, we'll go to the next slide. And here, just some really wonderful photographs of Ruben out there doing his thing. I've often joked with Alan and Ruben, why don't you guys just give me a ton of slides of you answering the phone? Thankfully, they're smarter than I am with that regard. Whenever we have a chance and they're out in the field, we take lots of we try to get them to take lots of photos of them doing their outreach and interacting with law enforcement and tribal leadership. So here you can see this was on the bottom left. Ruben was featured on an Indian Health Service panel. It was called the Lay Vaccinator Conference, and he was there to give advice and to weigh in about the state law and requirements regarding rabies vaccines and keeping your animals' vaccines up to date. Again, we're just so proud that when given an opportunity like that, he never shies away from it, and he's there to really to lend his expertise. And then over here on the right, we see Ruben with Antoinette Toya of the Indian Health Service. That was again at that 2025 Lay Vaccinator Conference. Next slide, please. And then I'm going to hand this back to Grace, and she's going to tell you about additional outreach that our team did in 2025.
Hello again. So I'm going to go over some non-legislative events that animal protection voters worked on. Starting in May, we assisted with the Windrock Living with Our Wild Neighbors event, which was a combined APV and APNM event that highlighted a lot of different departments in both organizations. In August, we had two events. We were the sponsors and table hosts for the New Mexico House Democratic Caucus Speakers Dinner, which is a really wonderful opportunity to be in a room with a lot of the movers and shakers in local politics. And we had the great pleasure of sitting and hosting Representative Herndon and her husband at this event. In August, we also attended the August for Animals Safe Together event. In September, we had a lot going on. So this is one of the last months that we can do events before we gear up for the legislative session interim work. So starting from the top down, we assisted with the Tuba City Equine Clinic, which Nina will talk about later. We joined Humane Communities at the Four Corners Vet Symposium to table and pass information off to some stakeholders who attended. We attended and sponsored the Emerge New Mexico Wine and Chocolate Gala, which was as fun as it was delicious. We also attended the Lineberry Foundation's 10th anniversary celebration. And then finally, we attended and tabled at the Woofstock Multi-Agency Pet Adoption Event, which is an event held in Edgewood, New Mexico, which gives a lot of different adoption groups opportunities to do offsite adoptions. And we were given, Animal Protection Voters was given the opportunity to present information on some of the priority bills that we were going to be working on in the 2026 session. Looking at the pictures from the top right first, I'm pictured with some of the animal control officers at the Windrock event. Down below, starting from left to right, Stacy and Judy tabling at the Four Corners Vet Symposium. Next to them, we have a picture of our attendees for the Democratic Caucus dinner. We also have a picture of Stacy at the Living with Our Wild Neighbors event, where she was interviewed for local news. And then finally, on the far right, we have animal protection voters staff pictured with a U.S. Senator from Vermont at the Emerge Annual Gala. Thanks. Oh, and then just real quick, I just really want to highlight that we don't just work in the Roundhouse. I know it can sound like all the work that we do is focused on the Capitol, but We do a lot of outreach events where we range from political to public education and outreach, as well as meeting with community stakeholders, which helps keep everybody engaged in and outside of session. Next slide, please. And finally, I will briefly go over our 2025 local elections. As Lisa alluded to in the introduction slides, we focused on mayoral and city council elections for Albuquerque, Las Cruces, and Santa Fe. We endorsed 15 candidates of all of those that were surveyed, and the election was held on November 4th, again, for mayor and city council. Something that is different in Albuquerque compared to Santa Fe and Las Cruces is what's called a runoff election. So if you don't meet a certain threshold for votes, you go into a runoff election. So it gives the candidates who are the top two candidates a second chance to do some work leading up to those elections, which were held on December 6th. We on animal protection voters work on endorsements, which is behind the scenes work before elections even take place. These are time intensive process where we look at the voting records, bill sponsorships, and the candidates' alignments with our values and missions as an organization. And our goal in doing these endorsements is to make sure that supporters like you all have as much information as possible before you guys go to the poll. The winning candidates are committed to promoting legislative priorities, including lobbying at the Roundhouse, and we really got to see that in 2026. Pictured on the bottom right is Las Cruces council member Becky Curran with her kitty, and she was a big ally for us during the Senate Bill 38 committee hearings. And then pictured at the top left, we have Mayor Tim Keller with his family and his family dog. And thank you all so much. And I'm going to pass the mic back to Lisa.
Thank you, Grace. And that was a wonderful summary of all of our 2025 legislation and elections. And just to kind of tie a bow on this, I want to just juxtapose after all these years where we are now with being deeply engaged in election cycles and making sure that candidates think about animal issues and animal policies as they go and run for office and how they're going to vote on those things. And also knowing that our issues matter in elections to candidates for office. So this process that's very tedious, as Grace indicated, of reviewing, voting records and all of that, it really takes a lot of time to understand who's going to speak up for the animals the best for us. This is really on your behalf, and we're very proud to be able to provide that important service. So I'm going to now talk for a few minutes about what I alluded to earlier is our big focus now for the next umpteen years, really, is going to be focusing on developing state infrastructure for animals and creating a Department of Animal Protection. And so that state infrastructure, as I mentioned, it comprised of hard and soft infrastructure. We're calling it our 4-paw plan. The first one is the goal of creating a state agency to consolidate, to coordinate, to regulate, and provide oversight of the humane care of animals statewide. Because currently there is no place in state government where there is a focus on animal protection, and the animal protection work and the places that animals and animals issues come up resides across a variety of departments and a variety of branches of government even, and our goal is to try to pull that together and have a focal point and a coordination center, and hopefully having more emphasis on animal protection in general, so our society is safer, healthier, and more humane, our society here in New Mexico. The other 3 paws relate to institutions, so making sure that agencies establish humane practices and humane policies, and like having humane education in the schools eventually, The protections paw really refers to reforming different laws, and one of our highest priorities next is going to be on our animal cruelty statutes, and then developing resources that help animal control officers and other law enforcement officers respond appropriately and be able to enforce the strong laws that we get passed. And then finally, the enforcement is what we're already doing in training and equipping officers, but we would like the state to be able to contribute to that. Our work to train officers won't go away, but we would like to have the state involved in that and funding that, just like they are with our domestic violence services that we provide. Next slide, please. Last year, one of the things that we were able to do was publish our vision document for the State Animal Protection Agency. And this was an opportunity for us to really be able to convey to supporters what this is going to look like. Now, this is our first draft, and it's it's subject to change as we learn more about maybe some higher needs. But right now, really what this allows us to do is to share this vision with, first of all, candidates for office, because as you can imagine, creating a new state agency is no small feat. That entails finding lawmakers and a governor and others at the highest levels of the state who will support the idea of spending money to do this work. And we believe New Mexicans deserve it, and we believe that our state will be a much better place to live and for people to visit when all of these issues are tended to properly. So we've been meeting with stakeholders, and those stakeholders are some of our elected officials in place and those running for office. So we've shared it with candidates and learned about how they feel about whether they're able to commit to this vision for us. And then we've also, last year, we did a lot of supportive research and documentation so that we are aware, have these efforts been done elsewhere, what's working other places, what's not working, and the kinds of things that we would do well to focus on. And then we have done, you heard mention of this earlier, where we're working on this regional animal services assessment project. That project was funded by the state. We were able to secure in 2024 $100,000 to do this assessment, a very big deep dive on the north central part of the state, and really look at animal services across the board for equines, for dogs and cats, for disaster prep, for domestic violence response, all of those things, and understand in tribal and non-tribal communities, understand where we are today and where the big needs are. And that's all going to be folded into our state infrastructure plans and the plans for where the priorities are for the Department of Animal Protection. Next slide, please. So I won't go through some of the things that you've already heard, but when you hear about, again, the soft infrastructure, things like creating funds and funding, those in some cases can support the brick and mortar. Like Stacy mentioned, the fact that some shelters simply need their roof to stop leaking. Those are our infrastructure projects. So all of these achievements that we worked on really lead into and support this broader mission of ours of broadening state infrastructure. So you've heard about the laws that we passed, reports that we've created, and these are all aimed at supporting the idea of improving policies, improving practices, and generating services and funding that our communities desperately need. Next slide, please. So one thing that you've probably, we've talked about this as an organization till we're blue in the face, and finally last year we managed to see this come to fruition, the pet food manufacturing fees, and I'll leave that for Judy Wolf to tell you about in a minute. But we have been responding. One of the things that we do is that we make sure that laws that pass, if they're challenged, we try to help make sure that those challenges don't prevail. So you're aware probably that there's been a lawsuit since 2021, trying to claim that the spay-neuter funding mechanism that we passed in 2020 is unconstitutional. And so we have been able to, with one donor's help, we were able to insert ourselves in that legal process, but we got permission to join the lawsuit and provide legal support to the state to defend that law. So last year there were a variety of updates that happened. There were attempts to try to pull the Board of Veterinary Medicine into the lawsuit that would have complicated distributions of spay-neuter funding. We were able to help get that stopped. And then finally, at the very end of the year, our attorneys filed what's called a motion for summary judgment. And this is a legal document that basically outlines our arguments for why we think that the law is constitutional, why we think that the plaintiff's arguments are not valid, and that the law should be able to go forward as is. Later on, you'll hear from Stacy that we were able to save this law from going away with it had a deadline in it, basically. But in the meantime, even with that having been passed in 2020, this 2026 session, this lawsuit is still out there, sort of looming over even our legislative win. So we are hopeful that this year, the 2026 preview is that there will be oral arguments heard in May 2026, and we are crossing our fingers that a judge will rule in our favor and tell everyone that this law truly is constitutional. In the meantime, the law is being implemented, so that's great news. Next slide, please. And then again, another law that we worked very hard for many years, over a decade, to pass, Roxy's Law, that establishes severe limitations on trapping, snaring, and poisons on our state's public lands, which in the definitions of the law really comprises about 50% of the state's land mass, which is really very consequential. Last year, we saw some developments in this. The state of New Mexico that was defending the law filed a motion to dismiss the lawsuit, and the federal judge ruled in favor of the state, so that was great news. Of course, as anticipated, the fur trapping organizations who don't like this law appealed, and there is an appellate panel who will review the case just to make sure that the law was applied fairly in the district court. And then this preview for 2026 is that APNM, APV, and our partner Humane World for Animals filed what's called an amicus brief, which is a legal document that we can file. We're not a party to the lawsuit, but we have a strong interest in the outcome. And so we're going to be able to, we have that ability to insert ourselves in a way and say how we think the law should be evaluated by the courts. So just so you know, this takes time. And again, it's really important after we do all the work to pass these laws, we want to make sure that they don't get challenged without us fighting to keep them in place. Next slide, please. All right, well, now you'll get to hear about our Building Humane Communities work, and I'd like to introduce you to Judy Wolf, who is our Chief Program and Policy Officer for Humane Communities.
Thank you, Lisa, and I want to thank everyone so much for being here today. We really appreciate the opportunity to share what we've been doing with you all. So the Humane Communities Department runs the bulk of our programming, and it also provides the model for much of our legislation. So given that, I want to thank my team for their tremendous work in managing and implementing our programs. That would be Victoria, Cesar, and Alexis. They are our on-the-ground workers, and they just do a stellar job. So in addition to the program work, Humane Communities heads up a number of campaigns and initiatives. And the first one is our Dairy's Not Fair campaign. This works to promote free access to plant-based milks in New Mexico schools. We rolled out this dairy brief in July, And right now we're hard at work building coalitions and developing policy. Our goal is to ensure that every child in school has a milk that they can drink, whether it's due to lactose intolerance or cultural or ethnic issues, or simply being vegan or any preference, we want them to have milk. And so this is one of our primary campaigns this coming year, and we're doing a lot of outreach in both English and Spanish to all of our communities. We also work very closely with the New Mexico Board of Veterinary Medicine, work with them to ensure that they fulfill their statutory duties for the Animal Sheltering Act. We also worked very closely with them this year in their distribution of $1 million in spay and neuter funds. We held a joint webinar with the Animal Sheltering Committee and kind of were along the process the whole way, because our goal was to see this money distributed, and it was the first distribution from some of the SB 57 funds that Lisa was just talking about. And we're also working with the vet board on a shelter complaint process. We also played a strategic role in collaborating with government affairs to pass the Animal Welfare Program Fund that Stacy talked about earlier. And following that, as Lisa said, we work on the implementation side as well. So we worked very closely with Department of Finance and Administration on developing a shelter survey to determine what should the first round of funding look like, what needs are out there, and how can those needs be met. It was very successful, and DFA distributed $3 million in funds to 23 counties and localities. So 2025 was really a great year. We saw $4 million going to animal welfare programs. And then we also assisted government affairs in the build-up for Saving Affordable Spay Neuter, which occurred during the 2026 session. And again, Stacy will talk about that. But we assisted in developing and creating a vast, diverse coalition. We attended legislator meetings. We gathered all of the research and data that would become integral in passing this law. And finally, for our care program services, we secured a 3-year competitive contract with CYFD for $787,500. We were thrilled. It was just a great start for us. It was just encouraging. We have worked for years to continue to build this program. And so that was great news. Unfortunately, only 1 year of funding was confirmed. And so once again, we teamed up with government affairs. We hit the ground running. We did our work, and Stacy will talk more about our successes of securing those funds and even securing a budget increase. Next slide, please. Another facet of our work is our community partnerships, where we partner with specific counties for spay, neuter, and transport services. Through our Valerie C. King Fund, we granted over $51,000 to McKinley County. Funding went to Brown Tracy Animal Welfare and McKinley County Humane Society. As a result of the funding, 465 animals were spayed and neutered, and 198 were transported out to areas where adoption rates are higher. Through generous private funding in Mora County, we granted $30,000 to the Las Vegas San Miguel Veterinary Hospital. To date, we've done 34 spay-neuter surgeries and 6 vaccines for clients in 11 Mora County municipalities. That fund is not fully expended yet, so we expect those numbers to go higher. Each of these counties are counties that have a great need and have a lack in animal welfare infrastructure. So this funding is truly integral to building healthy communities. Next slide, please. And one of our flagship programs is our care program services. As I said previously, we did receive a 3-year contract from CYFD to continue this all-important work. Care program services is divided into 2 prongs. The first one is our co-sheltering initiative. And under the co-sheltering initiative, we work very closely with domestic violence shelters to enable them to co-shelter. Co-sheltering means that domestic violence survivors and their animals can be housed together at the shelter. There are many different forms of co-sheltering, including animals in the rooms or animals on the compound. But this does not happen overnight. It takes a lot of training and preparation, and our program director, Victoria Murphy, works very closely with shelters throughout the state to improve their status. In 2025, she worked with the 7 shelters that are listed right there. And in addition to providing information on policy and protocol and training and supplies like outdoor sheds and waste stations, she spends a lot of time mentoring and walking shelters through the process. As part of that work, we do a lot of presentations and tabling at a variety of conferences to educate them on both the CARE program and co-sheltering. We also host an annual co-sheltering webinar for people around the state, whether it be law enforcement, advocates, animal shelters, domestic violence shelters. We try to bring everybody together under one roof so everybody can learn about the work we're doing. And I think that's it. Oh, a really important thing to notice, thanks to all of the hard work of the CARE team, co-sheltering in New Mexico, approximately 50% of shelters, domestic violence shelters, co-shelter, compared to a nationwide rate of 17%. So we are ahead of the game, and that's something that we are very pleased with. Next slide, please. So the next arm of our CARE program services is our helpline. As I said before, not every shelter offers co-sheltering. So what about survivors who want to flee but don't want to leave their animals behind? They can call our CARE helpline. Once they connect with us, we make sure that their animals get into secure and safe boarding and also receive the vet care that they need. The helpline functions Monday through Friday, and we do take a lot of calls and make referrals when necessary. And those who are appropriate for our services, we continue to work with them. So we had 130 calls involving 234 animals. 10 of those were referred to more appropriate services. And in the end, we provided direct services for 78 survivors and 132 animals. When we provide services, that means just what I said before. We provide boarding and vet care, emergency, wellness, spay, neuter, whatever the animal needs to be able to go into a boarding service. Right now, you'll see Mary Jane on the left and Abel on the right, and both of them received great services through CARE and were able to be reunited with their families. This work is really tough, really important work. Our helpline managers hear terrible stories every day, and yet they know that this work is so very key to the overall health of our survivors and the overall health of their companion animals. So it is a great project, and we are just so very thrilled with our staff who do this hard work every day. Next slide, please. We also provide funding for pet food pantries through our cafe project. In 2025, we provided $17,500 in companion animal food assistance to 7 organizations listed here. And you can see one of the food recipients on the right, very happy playing with the tennis ball. And that is our goal, is to keep animals like this in their homes, and sometimes just a little bit of assistance to the family can be helpful. And if we can look at the next slide. So in 2025, we served dogs, cats, equines, and yes, the bird on the right, who was a recipient of some bird food. We served over 8,000 animals, which served over 3,000 households with over 140,000 pounds of food. So you can see how strategic and important this program is. And we also provide things like storage containers, collapsible bowls, anything that might be necessary to help a food distribution site run smoother. Next slide, please. Now, this may be a smaller project in terms of funding, but its importance cannot be overstated. As two recipients from the Veterans Integration Center said, one says, "My dog is the reason I get up every morning." Another veteran says that having food available for his cat makes life feel normal again. One of our recipients in Santa Rosa said, "This support helps to keep my family together and shows that compassion still exists in our community." And you can see some photos below of animals who have received care. And I love that the cats are sleeping, because what does a happy cat do? It sleeps. And so these are animals that are better off for our food pantry. Next slide, please. And another very strategic program for us is our humane education program. Our curricula, the Virtual Animal Connection, served 852 students, 22 teachers, and 42 classrooms across several New Mexico counties. A key part of this work, in addition to the curriculum, which is 12 lessons that come with a variety of activities and ways to engage students, is what we call our compassionate action projects. And these are projects that students undertake within the community that revolve around animal welfare. And the goal is to improve animal welfare in their communities. For example, in grants, one classroom wrote letters for long-term shelter dogs. And those letters helped to get 8 dogs adopted that had been in the shelter for, I believe, over 140 days. So it's work like this, taking what they learn in school and translating it into action. And these are young kids. So this is some fantastic stuff. In fact, some of these compassionate action projects have been so successful that in 2025, we had an actual Orange Ribbon Animal Awareness Month where 6 schools participated in month-long activities. Other activities included presentations at UNM's School of Education and the creation of a humane education capstone for high school seniors at Gordon Burnell Charter School. This one is particularly exciting. Those that do the capstone at Gordon Burnell tend to move on into further education around animal welfare. And so that, again, raising up a new generation of animal welfare leaders. And then finally, our volunteer Sherry Mangold gave special presentations to 192 students. A lot of these are animal care and safety, be kind to animals, and bite prevention. Next slide, please. And I just want to speak to the importance of humane education. It is key to our vision of making humane the new normal. If we want to impact New Mexico and if we want to impact animals, we need to start with the children. And we've had just dramatic success with our humane education curricula. Our partner teachers are phenomenal. And on this slide, we can see Miss Ayala's work with her class. She is one of our just amazing teachers at Bernalillo Elementary, teaches 4th grade. And even her principal says, that sharing her passion for helping animals has made her a standout teacher, as if she wasn't a standout teacher already. But when we look at the work her kids have done, looking at the photos, be kind to animals, be kind to animals, and then be a voice for the voiceless. When we have our children saying these things, we know we've had an impact. And that just underscores just the important work that we are engaged in. Next slide, please. And finally, our Promoting Plant-Based Eating program. In 2025, we launched a new community food assistance and education program in partnership with Gordon Burnell Charter School and Three Sisters Kitchen. That allowed us to serve over 720 people with vital food assistance, and was all plant-based, locally sourced produce. And they were also given information on plant-based eating and how to cook plant-based foods at the same time. Overall, the program reached over 6,800 people through our variety of activities, which included tabling at multiple conferences. We did a lot of social media, including a couple social media campaigns, one of Did You Know series. We also did a meatless Thanksgiving and meatless holiday pledges. And we've written some blogs and done a complete plant-based eating website relaunch, all of these activities are reaching more and more people every day about the importance of plant-based eating, just for the environment, for animals, and for health. We also ensured that we worked very closely for Earth Day 2025 and ensured that 60% of the food was vegan and was with the vegan vendors, and also there was no pork products allowed. And I think APNM was strategic in making sure that Earth Day followed those rules. In fact, we were very specifically requested to be on the committee so that these things could happen. And we also were able to do a presentation at Earth Day on plant-based eating, and there was hundreds of people there to benefit from that event. And with that, that is Humane Communities. So I want to pass it over to Nina Edelman, our Chief Program and Policy Officer for Equine and Wildlife. And thank you all so much for being here today.
Thank you, Judy. And hello, everyone. I'm Nina Edelman, and I'll be presenting the equine and wildlife slides. So first here is we kind of have a two-part philosophy in our equine program. So it's our contribution to both the tangible and intangible safety nets for equines in New Mexico and more recently regionally. So our Equine Direct Services provides essential assistance such as emergency equine feed assistance, gelding assistance, some veterinary care on a community basis and to shelters, and also humane euthanasia for New Mexicans that struggle with paying for these services. And this significantly affects I'm sorry, there's a cat here. This significantly affects the welfare and well-being of equines, of horses, donkeys, and mules throughout New Mexico. So as you could see, we served a total of 685 equines from 341, I believe that should be households. So it was an impactful year. Some other things that we do outside of those core four services is, for example, provide community equine wellness clinics for communities that have either financial or geographical challenges to accessing veterinary care. We also, as we hear of various disasters that come up, such as wildfires or floods, we see if there's anything that we can do to help. So this last year, we're able to provide aid to the Oak Ridge fire that sprung up on the Navajo Nation on the border of New Mexico and Arizona. And even though I think it primarily affected Arizona, there were New Mexicans impacted too, and it just shows the importance of regional work because horses, communities, needs they don't really have borders, and things that happen, a few foot across from New Mexico border affects us too. And we also provided some flood disaster relief assistance to both the Ruidoso area and the Mescalero Apache tribe. And while we hope that in the long run, state government or even federal government can take over much of this work, until that is in place, we are here to help where and when we can. And we also assisted several of our licensed equine shelters, Horseshoe Canyon Rescue Ranch and Tamaya Horse Rescue in 2025. Next slide, please. This is a slide of some testimonials from our feed recipients, or from folks that have equines that received feed through our program. And it just goes to show how important some safety net services are to keeping equines safe at home with their families. Because when a crisis strikes, people should never have to choose between their human families and their non-human families. And we help as we can. So you could see some folks referencing having surgery. There's a couple of people that had unexpected medical issues that came up, and they one of them on the bottom there had to face the possibility of possibly selling her animals. And thanks to our program, she was able to keep them, and that is what we're here for. In the middle there's a testimonial about somebody who's had to take in animals from their late grandmother. and wants to continue that generational link. And that is so important because, as we become more urbanized as a society, we're losing some of those skills of, the horse connection, which primarily happens in rural communities. And we are hearing a lot from various communities that the young generation is not as versed about how to take care of horses and is not connected to horses as much as the previous generations. And that is a trend that is very troubling and that we would like to counteract. Next slide, please. And here is a little bit more about some less tangible parts of our program, although there's mention of more tangible ones like clinics. But one, our direct services, when we run the numbers, about half of our direct services go toward non-tribal members, but half of them go to tribal members because that's where a lot of the horses are. So we really work hard to foster partnerships with various tribal nations. So the Navajo Nation, the various Pueblos, and the Apache tribes, and that is a very important link in the equine safety net because a lot of state services are not available to tribal communities. So we only work as requested. We don't come in and tell anyone what they need. We listen, and when needs align, like when needs align with the values that we wish to bring, then we create partnerships with various communities. And we find that with tribal nations, a lot of times there's a great desire for humane, innovative solutions. And we are really privileged to be able to work in partnership with so many communities over the years. So this last year, we have facilitated a PZP training for 7 additional Navajo Nation staff members to use PZP fertility control for both domestic and free roaming horses. And that training also helped 3 more individuals, one of them that's working to use fertility control on horses in the Carson National Forest, and a couple of members from the Salt River Pima tribe in Arizona. So again, the importance of regional work. We provided 40 more doses of PZP vaccine to the Navajo Nation Veterinary Program to help treat domestic mares. Sometimes horses are allowed to roam freely when there's forage around to help folks save money. So treating the domestic horses in places where they do roam freely can help also prevent those horses contributing to free roaming populations. We have an ongoing partnership with San Felipe Pueblo to assist with their equine needs. And I just want to highlight them because they have a long-standing opposition to horse slaughter. And we are here to help them continue that in any way we can. Here's some more numbers, specific numbers about the assistance we provided during the Oak Ridge wildfire and the flooding in Mescalero Apache. And some statistics about the various equine clinics. I think we did eight equine clinics last year. 1 in Las Cruces, but the rest were in Navajo Nation and Pueblos. And again, these are communities that are often more remote than someone in Santa Fe or in Albuquerque or even in Taos, although you see Taos Pueblo on there. But as you probably know, there's a growing shortage of veterinarians, and this shortage is even more pronounced for equine and large animal veterinarians. And we've seen veterinarians retired. We've seen veterinarians, unfortunately, even tragically pass away, and that impacts communities because that might have been the only person in their area that provides those services. So we try to do our part to make veterinary care accessible and affordable to places that really need them. Then on the general state policy work, we did work on HB 284 last year, which would have established a humane and effective framework for the management of our state's free roaming horses. Unfortunately, while that bill passed almost unanimously both chambers of our legislature, it was pocket vetoed by the governor. We also worked on HB 358, which would have established an equine welfare trust fund to provide reliable annual funding into the Equine Shelter Rescue Fund. That fund is the only state source of support for our licensed equine shelters. And it is our strong belief that the state needs to take responsibility to supporting our licensed equine shelters, because our licensed equine shelters do the state's work for free. About 50% of the intake across the licensed equine shelter network come from law enforcement, such as the Livestock Board. They are a vital lifeline for our communities, and their life-saving work needs to be supported by our state for the services that they provide, just like dog and cat shelters are. But unfortunately, that bill died in committee. We are continuing to find more ways to make sure that Equine Shelter Rescue Fund has a source of reliable, dependable, meaningful annual funding, so that the shelters could know what to expect and how they could be supported by our government. Next slide, please. So here's the coexistence with wildlife slide. It's been a little bit of a quiet year. We've had some year-round social media posting about coexisting with wildlife and wild places. We put out seasonal posts regarding issues that we think are relevant during that time of year, and hope that it is helpful. We also helped raise awareness about the Jordan World Circus that's been touring New Mexico. Some more targeted species work for beavers. We finally updated our beaver resources guide. So that is available for download on our website with updated resources and some updated information. We are part of New Mexico Beaver Coalition. So we participate in a statewide coalition that helps promote protection for beavers and better policies statewide. For Mexican wolves, we're also part of a Lobo coalition, a regional coalition for the protection of the Mexican gray wolf. While the wild population of Mexican wolves has increased to 319 in 2025, which is up from 286 in 2024, the genetic diversity of that population is actually decreasing. So that is very troubling when you have an increasing population with a dwindling genetic diversity. So a big coalition effort last year was to attend a game commission meeting in Catron County, the heart of the wolf reintroduction area, and advocate on behalf of Mexican wolf for the release of bonded wolf pairs with pups to help increase survival rates and thereby increase genetic diversity, for allowing wolves to naturally expand north of the I-40 boundary to suitable habitats in northern New Mexico and Arizona, and to reject the killing or removal of wolves as a management strategy. Now, you've heard Stacy with Government Affairs talk about SB 5, that the bill that was signed into law, which overhauls the Department of Wildlife, formerly Department of Game and Fish. So after that bill was passed, we continued to work with a statewide coalition of other advocates to make sure to monitor its implementation and provide input as we were able. We also testified in support of the new State Wildlife Action Plan and are now part of that State Wildlife Action Plan core team to have a stronger voice about how the State Wildlife Action Plan is going to be implemented over the next 10 years. So thank you very much for listening, and I'm going to hand this back over to Lisa.
Thank you, Nina. Next, I'd like to share with you some of the great success we had with our Protecting Animals Used in Science program last year. Probably all of you are aware that the big win from 2025 was, as I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, seeing every last surviving chimpanzee that had been languishing in Alamogordo arriving at the wonderful Chimp Haven Sanctuary in Louisiana. And this campaign began about 30 years ago. And some of you maybe on this call were involved with that campaign even way back then. And it it shouldn't be so hard to change this policy, but so much changed, and so much meaningful change for chimps in general across the country because of this campaign, including the work that we did leading eventually, with support from other organizations, of course, to the end of chimps used in research in the United States. So really huge wins coming out of this campaign that began as a campaign to shut down the very notorious and horrific Colston Foundation. So all surviving chimps arrived safe at the Chimp Haven Sanctuary, and we held a historic chimp homecoming celebration at the Tamaya Resort in May. And you can see from some of the photos, we were very honored to have former U.S. Senator and former Ambassador Tom Udall as our keynote speaker. He had been one of the stalwart supporters of this campaign, helping us all along the way, and no matter what position he was in government. And we also had some very moving videos that we showed, including a video that celebrated the life of former Governor Bill Richardson, who helped us tremendously with chimpanzee protection and getting to the outcome that we arrived at in 2025. Again, for him, just like with Senator Udall, at every place that he occupied in government. You'll see on the right, there's Raina Smith, who's the executive director of Chimp Haven. Michelle Reininger, she's in charge of the colony, the chimp colony at Chimp Haven. And just some of these are photos of the chimps themselves, just remarkable individuals. Heidi on our team and I got to visit Chimp Haven last year and see some of our chimps at the sanctuary, and it was extremely moving and just a unique opportunity to really just see, after all these years, the difference that we've made in these individual lives, and also in the national policy on this issue, with no chimp research happening ever again in the United States. Years ago, we created a fund at the New Mexico Community Foundation called the Chimps to Sanctuary Fund. Some of you may have contributed to that over the years. And at the culmination of this campaign, we were able to finish out that fund and make a very sizable $53,000 donation to Chimp Haven. And that was used for their operating expenses to help care for our chimps, and also to help them acquire some new and very important veterinary equipment that they needed to provide just this advanced level of care that they provide for all the chimpanzees in their care. All right, next I'm going to give we can move on to the next slide, and I'm going to give the presentation back over to Stacy and Grace. I'm not sure which one is going to talk first, but take it away. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Yeah, so super exciting. We're just off the heels of the 2026 short legislative session, only 30 days. And as many folks on the call might know, in a 30-day short session, you're really constrained. You can only bring bills that are considered germane by way of being either directly related to appropriations, tax, or revenues, or a bill that was vetoed in the immediate prior session, or a bill that received a message from the governor. And so that really, takes a situation where it can be extremely difficult to pass laws and just puts the pressure on even more. You've got less time to get bills through the committees and onto the floor, crossing over to the other chamber and to the governor's desk. So hooray for the passage of Senate Bill 38, preserving the collection of fees on registered pet foods that go into the grant fund that is then administered by the New Mexico Board of Veterinary Medicine to the spay-neuter providers who go through a competitive process to be able to receive that funding so that they can provide those services in the communities that need it most. The bill, Senate Bill 38, was necessary to keep the law that we already had that was passed back in 2020 from expiring. So it was a very short little bill just to remove the repeal date, only 42 words. But in the words of Grace on our team, what a mighty bill for being only 42 words. As a result of SB 38 passing, New Mexico's affordable spay-neuter law, which collects that money for the grant program, will continue to bring in over $1.3 million a year so that the services can continue, as I said, in communities where we need it most. The last distribution that was made by the New Mexico Vet Board to the spay-neuter providers, what we saw was $700,000 roughly. Two-thirds of the money went to rural and tribal areas, and that's really the injection of funding that they need. So the money's going to keep flowing, and that's great news. Also, I spoke earlier about the passage of Senate Bill 5, which was the comprehensive overhaul of the Wildlife Commission and the Wildlife Department. And I mentioned there was a little bit of a missing piece, and Nina alluded to that as well. The work this session was focused on putting that missing piece in place, and that was putting in place a clear, fair removal process for commissioners, ensuring that they could serve without undue political influence and could be swiftly removed for disqualifying behavior. Heretofore, it was really at the whim of a governor, and as you could anticipate, with the change of governor that would happen when a new governor comes in, they were able to remove commissioners, even those who had no dereliction of duty, no malfeasance, but simply because perhaps they were not of the same political party, or just because they favored having someone on the commission that was an ally of theirs. Going forward, the process is, as I said, clear and fair, and not only would keep commissioners from being unduly removed, but as I said, protect them from the politics. Next slide, please. And then so excited and happy to just put a final touch on talking about the work that our team does to ensure that funding for the care program services can continue, and how we never give up. We find a way. Headed into the 2025 legislative session, it was a little unclear that adequate funding would be secured to ensure that the care services and the care helpline that Judy described would be able to meet the needs of all the callers that call in. We knew what that dollar amount would look like, and we knew that the contract with CYFD didn't look like it was going to. We weren't sure. We didn't have assurances from the agency that could happen. So we took the show on the road, so to speak. I really want to tip my hat to Judy Wolf, Humane Communities Chief. It is amazing to partner with her and doing this work. We've talked here during the presentation about how the work over on the 501c3 side, the services that we deliver and the work that we do in our communities really helps inform policy and shape policy. And it's really fabulous to be able to work so closely with with the chiefs here that we have at APNM. Thank you, Judy, for all your hard work. As a result of us teaming up and getting the message out to legislators before the session and then into the session, we were able to ensure that the funding to continue the care helpline services would continue through fiscal year 2028. Over $1 million, as you can see there on the screen, secured to keep those life-saving services going. I'll end this slide, which doesn't refer to anything with regard to working with Nina, our equine and wildlife chief. There's nothing on this slide about it, but I want to say hats off to Nina as well. It's not always visible. Uh, the hours that people have to put in, the travel that they have to put in for us to have a successful legislative session, but our team members, even when they're running their own programs and managing staff, and they've got so many obligations that they're taking care of over on the 501c3 side, you know, they don't shy away from helping us to get the right information to legislators and craft good policy at the Roundhouse during the session. So I just want to say thank you to Nina and Judy, to all of our staff, our incredible marketing staff that helps us so much all throughout the year, but in particular, we put a lot of demands on them during the session. It was really a great win this year, and I'm super excited, and that's all I'll say. I'm done with this slide. Okay, next up, immediately after the session, we pivoted to our statewide election work. As folks may know, in 2025, that's when, and Grace described this, that's when the local elections would happen for mayor and city council. But now we've moved into the 2026 cycle where a new governor will be elected, and there will be races for Secretary of State, for lieutenant governor, for land commissioner, and of course for all the House representatives at the New Mexico state capitol. The senators won't be running this cycle. So we've already dug into that election work, and our very first endorsement announcement that we were so happy to make was the endorsement of Representative Matthew McQueen for Land Commissioner. There's a lot of information on our website about him, and stay tuned because we'll be making more announcements about who we feel is the best candidate for governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, and as I mentioned, state house reps, as well as sheriffs. We're very busy querying the candidates, collecting information about the viability of their campaign, and really assessing would they be the best candidates, or excuse me, would they be the best if those candidates were elected into office in protecting animals through legislation and policy. Next up, I believe this is where I hand it back to Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stacy. Okay, well, we're coming to the end of the presentation. First of all, I want to thank all of our staff just for the remarkable work. You can see it's so comprehensive and so detailed, and takes so much dedication and so much determination, skills, resources, resilience, stick-to-itiveness, everything. We're here doing that work on behalf of you who care about this work, care about the animals, care about the health and safety of our community and wellness of our communities. Just my hats off to our program staff. I also want to take a moment just to thank all of our other support staff departments too. We have a very determined and very hardworking development team led by Dorte Hutchinson. We have our finance team led by Kelly Fisher, and we have our human resources and administrative team led by Jill Diamond, and our marketing and communications team led by Jesse Princiotto. And all of this put together, it takes everybody to do this work and to keep the organization strong and healthy and sustainable, which is the very important piece. We want to be here in perpetuity as long as things still need to be improved for animals in New Mexico. I also want to recognize here our board of directors for Animal Protection New Mexico and Animal Protection Voters, and also all of the volunteers that we rely on throughout the year to help with so many functions that helps magnify the work that our staff can do. So it's a big job, all of this, and we're so honored to be here to do this for New Mexico. I will just leave you with just like a kind of a sneak peek. I won't go through all of this, but just know that in this year that we're already in, of course, we've gone through the 2026 legislative session. You just heard Stacy review that. We are already thinking about what are we going to be working on 9 months from now when we're coming to January. So just know that the session work doesn't start in January. It starts really as soon as things are finished with the last session. So we're going to be looking at what makes sense for next year, what laws need to be changed, what coalitions need to be built, what legislation do we have to make sure doesn't get through, bad, bills that are bad for animals, and also the work to continue to protect the laws that we've passed, like Roxy's law and like the Affordable Spay-Neuter law. We are here to protect those laws and make sure they don't go away. And then also on the APNM side, all of the things that you heard are going to be continued into this year. All of those services, all of those ways of protecting animals, from near and far across New Mexico. All of that work is going to continue this year and beyond. And then to ensure our sustainability, of course, we are going to try to continue with your help growing the kinds of funds and resources that we need to be doing this work better and better year after year. So I think that that pretty much wraps it up, and I think now we're going to provide an opportunity for question and answer if you'd like to, and I'm going to turn it back over to Dorte.
Yes, thank you so much, Lisa. I'm looking at the questions right now. There were a number of questions asked and answered during the presentation. We do have one open question from Brenda McKenna. She is asking, have other candidates for New Mexico governor been invited to meet with APVNM regarding the proposed animal safety agency? And so maybe Stacy
I'm
can
happy.
answer that question.
Sure, happy to answer on that. Um, yes, hello, former Senator Brenda McKenna. It's so nice to have you with us today. Um, we queried all of the candidates on that question. They received that question on their questionnaire, and when we met with their campaigns, we had the opportunity to discuss with them. So, yep, everybody was asked about that to get their reaction.
Thank you so much, Stacy. And it looks like there are no other open questions. And with that, I would like to thank Lisa and the APNM and APV staff for sharing such powerful information about all the work that was done in 2025 and giving us a little bit of a preview on what is being planned for this year. We appreciate you all, your interest, your great questions, and wanted to let you know that we are recording this meeting and we'll make the recording available to anyone who registered and also those people, of course, who registered and couldn't make it. So we will send that out via a link, via an email. So thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today. We appreciate you all and everything you do for the animals in New Mexico and, of course, for their people too. You have a great evening and a wonderful weekend ahead. Take care. Bye.